Well, hello friends. In our previous lesson, we downloaded Android Studio onto our computers, set it up, but the installation process is not yet completely finished. So in this lesson, we're going to complete the SDK setups. And we'll also examine in detail how to create a project in Android Studio. So let's get started. All right, first we'll find the application called Android Studio, and that's the one that we downloaded from the search bar. Now, by typing Android Studio right here, we can find the application that we downloaded. Easy as that. And there's the app. So now I'll just click on the Open option. And now that opens the application. As you can see, a window like Android Studio Setup Wizard opens. Now we can start the setup. So I'll press the Next button. And right here, we'll come across two different options: standard installation, custom installation. Now you can select the standard setup here and complete the necessary setup procedures. But I want to show you all the steps in the setup phase. So I'm going to choose the custom option just so that you are aware of it. So I'll press Next again. And on this page, it asks us to select the JDK. And that means Java Development Kit and where it's going to be located. So at this stage, it's pretty useful to explain what the JDK is. It is indeed the developer kit developed by Oracle, the founder of Java, in order to develop Java programming language applications using Android Studio. Now, of course, this kit comes embedded with Android Studio, so we don't need to install JDK separately. And that's why we choose the embedded JDK option here. So we can press the Next button again. And here, too, we can choose the background color of the interface that we will encode. There are two different options: Darkula and Light. I usually prefer the light mode. You can also change these settings later. Now I'll press the Next button again. Now on this page, we will do the necessary steps for SDK. And that basically means Software Development Kit. And here's where we install it. Now you can see there are three different options here: Android SDK Platform, Performance, and Android Virtual Device. So it's worth noting at this point that we can test the applications that we make in Android Studio on virtual devices offered to us by Android Studio. So the settings here are generally related to the performance of this virtual device. And I just suggest you choose all the options here. Otherwise, you may run into some problems later on, but that's why I generally choose all three options. Now, just below, we'll need to specify the SDK location. And of course, I generally use default locations. But of course, you can save it to any folder that you want. And I'll press the Next button again. And on this page for the emulator, we can adjust the RAM size that we're going to give to it. In general, we can always use the size suggested here. And then while your emulator's running, the size that you set will be used from your RAM. Of course, when you turn off the emulator, your RAM continues to run at the size before it started. All right. So without changing anything, I'll just click the Next button. So this page also lists the settings that we've made so far. And if there's any setting that you want to change, you can always return to the pages where we made the relevant settings just by pressing Previous. And if you don't make any changes, if you can just confirm all the settings. And that completes the installation when you click the Finish button. All right, so yeah, the download starts. And again, the process may take a little while. So I'm going to just jump ahead, and then we'll continue where we left off. Okay, so now the installation's complete. I just press the Finish button. And now what you see here is creating a new project in Android Studio or opening an existing project. So more precisely, this will be the first screen that we see whenever we open the Android Studio. Now we can create a new project. So I'll choose a Create New Project option here. And then from this page, we'll choose a template for the Android project that we're going to create. So first, let's have a look at the different tabs here. And as you know, Android operating system is used not only in phones and tablets, but also in watches, televisions, cars, and many other things out there. So if you want your application to work on whatever type of device you want your application to work on, you need to choose a template suitable for the device in question. Now, of course, since we will develop applications for tablets and phones, we're going to use the Phone and Tablet tab. And certainly there are many different templates under this tab. Android Studio offers us some ready-made templates so that we can, get some faster results when you're creating projects. For example, we're going to make an application related to Google Maps, so we can make use of this template here. Now, oftentimes we'll choose a blank template. And if you notice, there's an expression here called empty activity. So we're going to hear the concept of activity very often from now on, because in Android, the software part and the interface of design that's shown to the users is the activity. All right. You might be a little unfamiliar with the concepts right now, but as we move along throughout our lessons, we're going to examine each of the concepts in detail. But just stick with me for now and choose the empty activity option and press the next button. From this page it opens, we will configure the project that we will create. So in other words, we'll determine the name and the programming language of our project right here on this page. So let's make some of those definitions. So I'm going to name my project first up. You can type in any name that you want, but at the same time, I think that the name that you write here will be the name of your application, don't you? For now, I'll just write first project, because I also want it to be very clear what it is. And the second field is where we set the package name of our project. You can think of the package name as your application ID, right? So generally, the project package names are created as com.anything.application names. So if you leave it as this example, you wouldn't be able to publish your application on Google Play, because Google accepts the phrase, the example, as, well, sample work, and it doesn't allow it to be published on Google Play. So therefore, if you work for a company or, well, even if you're just a private developer, you can enter specific phrases, right? Such as your company name or even your own, last name or whatever. I'm just going to leave it as example for now, because I'm not going to be publishing this anywhere. Now, the third part here is the file path, and this is where our project will be saved. So as always, you can save your project in any folder on your computer. But notice, though, that there are / and project names at the end of the file path. So if you change the file path, just be sure to add the / and project name to the end of the new file path. Otherwise, you won't be able to save your project. Cool? So in the fourth part, we have to choose the programming language that we will use in our project. We will build our applications using Java. So I'll choose Java. Now the fifth section is minimum SDK. So in other words, if we want our applications to run on Android, we can determine it from this section. As you know, Android is continually releasing new versions like Android 9, Android 10, 11. So from this section, we can determine the minimum Android level at which our application will run. For example, if we choose Android 8, well, the application will work on Android 8, Android 9, Android 10, and 11, right? So it's 8 and up. So the version you choose refers to the minimum Android version that it's going to work on. Notice that when I choose any version, Android Studio tells us right here below what percentage of Android devices this application will run on. It's always useful info. So if you're going to publish your app on the Play Store, you can choose a low Android version from this section. Of course, at this point, I should also mention the following. Since some codes are updated in every new version of Android, choosing the lowest Android version can sometimes cause you problems. Therefore, yes, there is another option. I generally choose API 17 as my level. Now, of course, we can change all these settings later, my friends, but I want to show you where they are. But since we are doing some sample projects, for now, you can just choose any version. So finally, a checkbox has been created here, and we'll be able to use the Android support library, which is Android's old library. So we're not going to choose this option because we are going to use the Android X library. And this is the current library of Android. And we're going to be using this in our projects as we continue. So now we'll be able to create our first project just by clicking the Finish button. And depending upon what sort of computer and what horsepower it's got, it might take a little while to create your first project. It is all related, but it's all good. If you have a pretty fast computer, you can create your project course in a shorter period of time. You may encounter an assistant like this when any innovation or update is made in Android Studio. So you can review this document. You can also close this window by clicking the Assistant tab here. Now, in the lower right part of the interface, we'll see an expression regarding the process of creating the first project. So here, we shouldn't take any action before seeing the project is completed. Otherwise, you may encounter some problems in your project, right? So again, opening the Build tab here, we can see if the project has completed. So when the project's completed, or if there are any errors that it encounters, you can see these operations from this section here. So the process of creating the project, like I said, may take some time. That's why I'm going to just stop the screen recording at this point. And when the project completes, we'll continue where we left off. All right, my friends, as you can see, our project's been created. So far, we have set up Android Studio, created our first project. So we'll take a short break here, and in the next lesson, we're going to examine the interface of Android Studio. So I'll see you in the next lesson.